Hello and welcome to another edition of Uncle Alex's Record Librarium, where we explore some of the records in the collection that I've been building since the Great Depression. It's another 4AD Friday, where we explore some of the music on the British 4AD label. Last 4AD Friday, we talked about This Mortal Coil's It'll End in Tears LP, where different members of 4AD bands were listed on each track, so that I used that as a guide in exploring some of the music of 4AD. Well, that was in 1986, and then about a year later, 4AD label put out a compilation album called Lonely as an Eyesore, with tracks that were featuring each of the bands that was on the label in 1987. It's a wonderful record, and aside from that, on the inner sleeve, they had a catalog listing of all of the releases that the 4AD label had released since the label was founded in 1980. This was a goldmine for someone who was interested in finding and collecting all of the 4AD catalog. In fact, I actually made my own 4AD notebook, as you can see here, where I listed all of the titles in my notebook, and I used a blue pencil to highlight the ones that were out of print according to the catalog, and also used a red pencil to indicate ones that I had collected and that I had found for my collection. Pretty nerdy, I admit. One of the frustrating things was that from the year 1980, the year that the 4AD label was founded, none of the items that were released that year were still in print, except for 6 of them. And one of those was an EP from a band called Rema-Rema, 4-song EP called Wheel in the Roses. According to the catalog, it was still in print, although I'd never seen a copy, and I worked at Budget Tapes and Records in Yakima, and we worked with an importer. I think most record stores then, you couldn't go online back then and listen to a song. You had to try to find a physical copy, and since the 4AD label was in England, they weren't able to just send us directly their records to the USA, so we had to work with an import company that would then try to acquire the records from other countries and then work out the customs and everything like that, and then supply them to the record stores in the USA. Well, our importer had never heard of this Rema-Rema Wheel in the Roses record, so they weren't able to get it. But I used to often go down to Portland, Oregon, which had 2 really great record stores that I would always visit. One of them, which is long gone, I'm afraid, is called the Ooze. It was a little underground record store that had a lot of really cool records, including a lot of 4AD catalog. And then the other one was 2nd Avenue Records, right downtown Portland on 2nd Avenue. And I actually found quite a lot of out-of-print 4AD titles there. And they didn't have the Wheel in the Roses EP, but I was able to order it from them, and they got it in for me. So I drove back down and picked it up. The one I got actually had this logo on it, the 4AD logo that was used later. So I was wondering why it was on this copy of a record that was released in 1980. Later I found out that they had reissued the record in 1984. That's why it had the more modern logo. And since then I've ordered the original 1980 copy online, so that's what I have in my collection now. 4AD actually released in 2019 this 2-album version of Wheel in the Roses called Fond Reflections that included other tracks that were recorded but not included in the initial release, and it also has this really great photo of the band. One of the songs on the original Wheel in the Roses EP was Fond Affections, which is a song that was covered on the It'll End in Tears album by This Mortal Coil. The record is really good. It's kind of the gritty, post-punk, darker sound that was coming out of England from a lot of alternative bands in the late 1970s and early 1980s. And it's interesting because then 4AD later became known as kind of the wispy, ethereal music. And then when Throwing Muses and Pixies were signed to the label, they went back to sort of a grittier, janglier sound. And in this early music, you can hear some of the sudden tempo changes that I associate with the Throwing Muses at the beginning of their tenure on the label. I'm going to play part of a track called The Feedback Song from the Rema-Rema Wheel in the Roses EP, and you can hear some of the tempo changes there. Let's listen. love this early 4AD stuff. What are some of your favorite bands from the early days of 4AD? The band split up shortly after this EP came out. Marco, one of the members of the band, left to join Adam and the Ants, and then some of the remaining members formed a band called Mass, and then other members went on to form the Wolfgang Press, and those all were released by 4AD, so we'll talk more about those later. Well, anyway, thank you for watching another 4AD Friday, and I'll see you soon. Until then, be nice to each other, and try not to break any records.